Just hit the green, I assume. Whoops. All right. So last September, my husband and I decided, since our kids were all off to college, we were empty nesters, we were going to celebrate by taking a month-long vacation, clearing our heads, and pretty much getting off our email. And I was asked to speak at this conference quite a while ago, and so it sort of was sitting in the back of my head, what was I going to speak about? And of course, about a week before we started returning to reality, we started thinking about these things. And so at the last 3 weeks in, we were in the Loire Valley at the Chateau de Blois. And as we walked up to this amazing chateau, there was a large statue inside a wall right before you go up the steps of Joan of Arc. And it was here where she was blessed by the kings before departing with her army to drive the English from Orleans. She was born from a peasant family and went on to be the heroine of France. And I believe she was all of 16 years old when she went on to save France. And so my guess is that if she was born today, she would have made a hell of a scrappy entrepreneur. And so that helped me start thinking about what I was going to speak about today. 9.1 million women owned businesses in 2014 compared to 8.6 million in 2013. 7 years ago, I started angel investing, and 11 years ago, I started blogging. It was the beginnings of the next generation of the web that we all refer to today as Web 2.0. And it was the first time, because I was involved in the first generation of the web, that I was really beginning to see more and more women entrepreneurs. Women entrepreneurs had much more interesting businesses that seemed a little more business savvy, and I think it was my blog that really connected to them. And so as I moved forward as an investor, I made a conscious decision to invest in women because women had a harder time getting invested in. It doesn't mean that I don't invest in men, but they have to be exceptionally better than the women. Since 1997, women-owned firms have increased in number by 68%. They have grown revenues by 72%, and they have added 11% more jobs. This is basically when I began to invest. And people ask me all the time, are women entrepreneurs different than their male counterparts? And the answer is yes. On average, women start their companies with 50% less money than their male counterparts. Women are collaborative. In many ways, they're more happy to be led. They are more sensitive to their strengths and weaknesses, and they absolutely value contribution. And I'm not saying that there are not men that don't have these traits as well, because I'm certainly making a broad generalization, but if you read a lot about some of the data that's been pulled in the last couple of years, what I'm saying is pretty much what most people talk about when it comes to women versus men. I also find that women are really in it for the long haul. They keep their heads down until they reach their goal. They're great at managing teams, and they will continue onward until they figure out what will make them a success. One of the things that I really like about women is they're willing to admit that they don't know the answer, and I find that incredibly humbling. So in order to really understand where women are today, I think it's important to go back in time. Sibylla Masters is the first woman inventor that we know about. She was the inventor of the corn mill. Her invention made it easier for corn to be processed into food and materials. The patent was issued to her husband because at this time it was illegal for women to receive patents. The first woman who actually got a first patent was a woman named Mary Keyes. It was in 1809, and she invented weaving straw into silk to essentially make hats. Both these women built products that filled voids in their lives, and we continue to see that in women entrepreneurs today. Josephine Cochrane, who built the first dishwasher, was a wealthy woman who entertained frequently. She got her patent in 1866 after proclaiming, "If nobody else is going to build or invent a dishwasher, I will do it myself." It did not take off originally, even though it was shown at the World's Fair. It was really embraced by hotels and restaurants, large restaurants. Although the manufacturer that she worked with continued on through the years, it was not until the 1950s that this manufacturer began to produce these items that we really began to sell to consumers, and that company that we know is today called KitchenAid. Mary Anderson was a real estate developer, a rancher, a viticulturist, and the developer of the first windshield wiper. She was obviously a woman way before her time. Her first visit to New York City was in 1903, and that was her inspiration for the windshield wiper. She saw trolleys having incredible difficulty clearing the ice off their windshields. There were similar devices at that time, but hers was the most effective one. In 1905, she decided to sell the rights of her invention to a noted Canadian firm. But they rejected her application outright, saying, "We do not consider it to be of such commercial value as would warrant our undertaking of its sale." And after the patent expired in 1920 and the automobile manufacturing business grew exponentially, windshield wipers using Anderson's basic design became standard use for all vehicles. By 1922, Cadillac became the first car manufacturer to adopt them as standard equipment. She was quite the woman, but I can't help but wonder if the company who rejected her patent was a group full of men that just saw her name. Ruth Wakefield was a dietitian. Her husband and her owned a quaint little hotel called the Toll House Inn, and Ruth would bake for the patrons. One day she tossed in Nestle's chocolate chip cookies into her cookies instead of baking chocolate, and accidentally she invented the chocolate chip cookie. She called them Toll House cookies. And she made an agreement with Nestle's that would basically print her recipe on the back of every single chocolate chip bag, and for that, they would give her chocolate chips for life. And again, I wonder, like, who was the person that negotiated that deal? Was that her husband? Marion Donovan spent most of her childhood hanging out at a manufacturing plant with her father and uncle, who were inventors themselves. As a housewife and a mother, she was frustrated by the repetitive, dirty process of changing soiled diapers, soiled sheets, and everything else that got soiled. And she wanted basically to keep her kid dry. So she took her inventive know-how, she took down a piece of her shower curtain, she took some fabric, she grouted her sewing machine, and she sat down and she made the first disposable diaper. There were a few designs out there right at that point, but hers was the only one that did not create diaper rash, pinch the kids, and really kept the kids dry. She took her product to every large manufacturer across the country who said it was superfluous and impractical. It took a full decade before someone said they would draw upon her vision and build what we know today as the company that makes Pampers. My guess is, again, it was a bunch of men, of those initial manufacturers, who deemed the disposable diaper as an unneeded necessity. Virginia Apgard was an obstetrical anesthesiologist. She not only invented the Apgar test, a standard that assesses every baby from the second it comes out of the womb. She had over 60 patents and was a proponent of the importance of early detection childhood illnesses. Virginia was never one for the women's movement. In her opinion, women were liberated from the time that they left the womb. Patsy Sherman was a chemist who not only discovered Scotchgard, but she also discovered a stain and water repellent for 3M. In 1947, she took an aptitude test that indicated that she would be the perfect role of a housewife. She demanded to take the boys' aptitude test, which resulted in her interest in science and chemistry, which was her eventual career path. And again, I want to wonder, I cannot believe in 1947 that when you graduated high school or even college, that you took these tests, that men took different tests than women's, deciding what their aptitude was. Stephanie Kwolek, another chemist, invented Kevlar. She spent 40 years at DuPont. She was never paid for her patent, but was awarded the Lavoisier Medal from DuPont in 1955 for outstanding achievement. At 2014, at the time of her death, she was the only female to receive that award. The last group of women were all inventors. Owning and starting companies was, I don't think, something that most women thought about doing prior to world wars. Women basically either owned bars or brothels or perhaps restaurants, or if anything, perhaps we don't know, that they actually did have several companies, but it was their husband's name on the door. The war actually changed that. Martha Rudkin was the eldest of 5 children. She learned to bake from her grandmother. She was the valedictorian of her high school class, and she took a job as a bank teller after graduating. She got married in 1923, had 3 sons, and her husband bought an estate called the Pepperidge Farm. They were pretty well off until the Great Depression, and in order to make money to pay for things, she sold apples and turkeys. Her son had asthma, and he could not eat the town's local bread, and so she started making a specific whole wheat bread for him. The doctors wanted to know what she was serving her son and started buying the bread from her. Soon, her husband was distributing this bread and selling it locally, and before she knew it, he was distributing these breads across the county. And by 1948, she was producing 50,000 loaves a day, no longer in her kitchen, but in a baking facility. She began to grow into other products, eventually building quite a large company and selling it to the Campbell Soup Company and overseeing it until she retired. Lillian Vernon grew up in the wholesale business. At 24 years old, she took $2,000 of her wedding money and placed it in an ad in 17 magazine for personalized belts and bags. The response was overwhelming, and the business was born. She literally built her business around her kitchen table. The company grew up focusing on products for young women, and that eventually got the eyes and ears of cosmetic companies that decided they wanted to partner with her for distribution. In 1987, which is not that long ago, Lillian Vernon went public, and it would be the first women-founded publicly traded company. Mary Kay Ash married at 17. Her husband went to war, and she made money by selling books door to door in order to provide for her 3 sons. When her husband returned in 1945, they divorced, which was way ahead of her time. She went to work for Stanley Home Products, and she was passed over for a promotion by a man that she had trained. She quit with the intention of writing a book to help other women like her to assist women in business, and that business turned into a business plan. That book turned into a business plan. Her next funding for her business was going to come from her husband, her new husband, who unfortunately died of a heart attack, and it was her oldest son that gave her $5,000 to begin Mary Kay Cosmetics. Her concept was designed to help women advance by helping others succeed. She believed in God first, family second, and business third, and she insisted that women that worked for her keep a good balance in their lives. Estee Lauder. Working in her father's hardware store, she got her first taste for understanding business. She knew exactly what it was going to take to be a successful entrepreneur. She then agreed to help her uncle, who was a chemist, with his business, and soon she became more interested in the business than he was. She created a skincare line for herself, and her hairdresser wanted to know how come her skin was so absolutely beautiful. She started to produce the skincare line for others, and then she began to sell it. She knew that one product after another is the way that you grow a business. By 1953, she launched Youth Dew, her first fragrance, and by 1984, Youth Dew was doing $150 million a year. She never worked a day without selling. She said, "If I believe in it, I sell it, and I sell it hard." Martha Stewart took a catering business and built an empire, making an impact on an entire generation of homemakers. We all know her legal issues, and we've heard how difficult she is to work with, but her passion that drove her to grow, like Estee Lauder, was in it for the long haul. Eileen Fisher is a privately held company. She began her company with $350. She took her first order and built the business, and then went on to open her first brick-and-mortar store. The business does hundreds and hundreds of million dollars a year. She also awards annual grants to wholly owned women businesses that are innovative and have a social conscience. Fisher flies way under the radar, but her success is obvious. So as I said, about 10 years ago, I started to notice a change as I saw more and more women entrepreneurs who were looking for funding to grow their businesses. I think it's a combination of many things. I think, first of all, it's the long tail of the sexual revolution. Essentially, women can delay having children or decide not to have any at all. They are focused on their education and their own businesses versus being a homemaker like Patsy Sherman was told that she should be in 1947. And now women can essentially have an attempt to have it all too. They can build their businesses and hopefully have a children and family as well. Technology has allowed all of us to be connected all the time. Our personal lives have begun to blur with our careers. And quite frankly, that is very good for women. In education, women are outpacing men in college degrees. And you have to remember, only 50 years ago, when women graduated college, they were told either to be a teacher or a nurse after graduating. A lot has changed. Just 4.4% of active venture capitalists are female. The investors sitting on the other side of the table are mostly men. As it had always been an issue based on the history of these successful women that I noted, it was much harder for them to get funded. It is really hard to be on the other side of a table when the person pitching to someone who's on the other side of the table who does not understand that disposable diapers has the potential to be a multi-billion-dollar business. But things are beginning to change, particularly when the data shows that women have a 35% higher return on investment than their male counterparts of 12%. There were fewer than 20,000 female angel investors in 2005. But that number has increased to nearly 58,000 as of last year. So obviously, there are more female angel investors. What's interesting is that 45% of American millionaires are women, and 60% of them earned it on their own. And more important is that women truly understand the power of the internet. Women make up 23% of all the entrepreneurs seeking angel capital in 2013, up from 9% in 2005. Women are seeking more capital to grow their businesses, and not only one-on-one, but through crowdfunding sources and also investment groups. There are women building all kinds of different businesses, not just e-commerce and fashion businesses like some of us like to believe. Just like the women of the early 1800s, women are still building businesses that fill voids in their life. I really believe that entrepreneurs who build products that come out of their personal desires versus sitting down around a table and trying to figure out how they can become an entrepreneur are not as successful. You have to drink your own Kool-Aid and you have to use your own idea. Today, hold on one second. Although women and men equally make up most of the internet users, almost 60% of the purchases are made by women in a $215 billion global marketplace. And they have 85% influence over what is bought. They spend more money on electronics, computers, events, tickets, cards, gifts, and clothes. Women are representing the majority of purchases made, so why wouldn't you want a woman behind an e-commerce business? Essentially, women rule the internet. What if women entrepreneurs were funded at the same rate and amount as their male counterparts? The conversations taking place about women entrepreneurs are at every turn. I've been the co-chair of the Women's Entrepreneur Festival that I put on with ITP, a division of the New York Stern School, over the past 5 years. We were definitely ahead of the curve. The funny thing is about putting on a Women's Entrepreneur Festival is that mostly only women apply to come. But we realize how great that is. It is an incredible event where women connect, become members, mentors, they take their businesses. They talk about their businesses, and quite frankly, they also talk about the difficulties about being an entrepreneur while still trying to have a life. That is happening in more places these days, and it is important, and it is authentic. Women-owned businesses have been growing at an accelerating rate of over the past 17 years. Organizations with women in top management achieve a 34% higher return. Venture-backed women-led tech companies achieve a 12% higher return. But 7% of VC-backed startups are run by female CEOs. We are at a tipping point. It is a moment where women are on the threshold. Women's businesses are becoming an unstoppable force that will change our lives forever. When more women get funded, more women have multiple exits, more women go public, and more women build household name products and companies, things will change. And so, I believe the next revolution will be run by women. These are the women that I believe will be at the forefront of that change, and I am invested in every single one of them. Corey Hardy, Little Borrowed Dress, the one-stop shop for bridesmaids, rentals, and soon everything simple made for your wedding. Karen Mayo, Nestio, offers landlords, brokers, and renters the ability to manage and communicate information on real time, all in one pace. Jessica Banks, Rock Paper Robot, is a design company that specializes in the invention and fabrication of kinetic furniture, lighting, and robotic installations. Amanda Hesser and Meryl Stubbs of Food 52, the place where kitchens meet for recipes, e-commerce, and conversation. Kelsey Recht, Venue Book, discover and book your ideal venue. Aya Badir, Legos for the iPad generation. Kelly Khalil, Loverly, helps you discover and save weddings and make purchases all in one easy place. Mara Zapata, Switchboard, lets you ask for what you need and offer what you have within a trusted community. Tanya Mendez, Maker's Row, factory sourcing made easy. Laura Behrens-Wu, SHIPPO, shipping make it easy. Catalina Gerard, Naja, luxury lingerie at fair prices. Kate Whiting and Caitlin Trabuco, EduSense, brings you tips, bargains, and deals in educational crafts inspired to bring the family together. Ariel K., Parachute Home, rethinking the basics of bedding. Susan Zhang and Connie Wong, Linksy, matching recent grads with non-technical roles at high-growth startups. Susan Z., Hullabaloo, apps that feature original characters, art, music, and activities where your child's touch makes a magical world of adventures come to life. Jen Beckman, 20 by 200, art for everyone. Christine Bognet, Platejoy, healthy eating for busy people. Amy Cheshire, Hey Gorgeous, your style discovered from sizes 10 and up. Krista Freeman and Jess Eddy, Brooklyn Made Ice Cream. Nicole Hamilton, Tactile Finance, builds solutions to help customers navigate complex financial products. Jess Brondo, Admittedly, don't waste time applying to the wrong university, find your best match and improve your chances. Ida Tin, a period and ovulation tracker app that continues to track your body throughout your life. Kelly James, Mercaris, market data service and online trading platform for organic, non-GMO, and certified agriculture commodities. Megan Conroy, Capture Proof, securely shares photos and videos doctor to doctor and patient to doctor. Sandra Galt, True Galt, using 3D technology, we can scan your feet and make beautiful custom shoes that fit. Rachel Chong, Catch a Fire, matches professionals who want to give their skills with nonprofits and social enterprises that need your help. Amanda Elion, Videolicious, business-to-business platform making simple videos through your phone, tap and tape. Christy Prunier, Willa, natural skincares for girls selling through the next generation of women entrepreneurs. Lauren Brill, Sweet Loren's, a baking company that offers natural cookie dough at your local grocery store. Just cut and bake. Amanda Steinberg, Daily Worth, a community about women who talk about money. Julia Fowler, Edited, fashion, luxury, and apparel, connecting those people with data that they need to make better decisions about their businesses. Jean Lohr, Sweeten, matches your project with the right architects, interior designers, and contractors. Aaron Newkirk, Red Stamp, modern correspondence for the 21st century. And finally, Carla Holtz, Parable, reimagining mobile advertising. These are the women of our future, and honestly, the future is now. All of these women believe that if you conceive it, you can achieve it, and so do I.
All right, so let's turn over to questions. And I'll kick it off with just a question about, you talked about why women are oftentimes the founders of a lot of these things that we end up finding to be indispensable. But how about also, a lot of us are students here who could potentially work for one of these companies. Mm-hmm. How about women as leaders of teams and as managers? I'm sure part of the success of obviously any company is not only the idea, but also the execution. Insights into how women have an advantage in that area as well?
I think women talk in terms of we, not I.
Yeah.
They're very great at managing teams. I actually think that's one of the reasons that we don't see enough women on the investing side. I talk to a lot of the associates that join VC firms, and they end up leaving to go to grad school or start a company. And I've talked to many of them and say, I really hope when you get later in your life that you come back to this, when you've already created a community around yourself with your kids and your family and other friends, is that being an investor is a very lonely business, and mm-hmm. women like to be part of teams.
Great. All right, so let's turn to some of the questions from the audience here. I'm just going to start picking a few here. How about, so how do you explain the small number of women entrepreneurs in technology specifically? Although, obviously from your presentation, there are many going into technology, but.
There are a lot of women who are in technology business. Years ago, someone actually said to me, I wish all these women were doing fashion businesses. And it's like, really? Well, I wish all these men were, building technology businesses. It's like, you do what fills voids in your life in the places that you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And so asking someone to build something they don't feel comfortable in is absolutely, utterly ridiculous.
I agree. Here, let me turn to actually a even better question here. So what stage in a woman's life do you think it is best to be a founder?
I think anytime. I will say that I have investments in women that are, 22 to 40-ish. I can tell you that all the women that are with a partner, I've been with someone for a long time, I say all of them, have your children now. Do not wait. Hundreds of years ago, people were having kids out in the fields and they'd be churning butter in the afternoon. The reality is that you're going to figure it out. And I just don't think that you should put your personal life on hold for your professional life.
Great. So actually, this is a good question at the top. I'm going to kind of phrase it somewhat differently. So you have female entrepreneurs seeking funding. So if you were talking to one of your entrepreneurs who's going in to meet with all these different VCs, groups of men for the most part behind tables, what advice would you give the entrepreneur kind of mentally going into these pitches? And also, what advice would you give the VCs, many of whom are in the audience as well?
I think for women that are pitching their business, listen, I really do believe that if you build a killer business, you're going to find funding. There's not even a question. And of course, at the beginning, it's the much more difficult. I see so many companies struggle at the beginning, then they struggle in the post-seed phase, and all of a sudden their businesses take off, and it's not as difficult to raise money. And I also see the women feeling much more confident in themselves when they go and pitch the businesses, because they're kind of like, okay, I build this. I think one of the important things, and this was actually asked last time, which is how do you find the right VC? You have to find the right VC on the other side of the table. Mm-hmm. Are they interested in these kind of businesses? To go and pitch to people that have no interest in the business that you're in makes zero sense. It's a waste of time for everybody.
Yep. And then for the VC community, is there something that the VC community can do to help usher in this revolution as well?
Yeah, listen, there's certain VCs that have a particular thesis. They only invest in what they invest in. And if you're not part of that thesis, don't go talk to them. But if you're a broad range, and I think that one of the important things that I always say to entrepreneurs, ask, make the ask like you should always be selling. Mm-hmm. People walk out of a room and they say, oh, that was a really great meeting, and then they can never talk to the VC again. It's just like, say, are you actually interested in my business?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So ask.
Ask.
I like that. Here's another interesting one, which I actually know you have some experience with this one. Do you ever invest in male-female founding teams, and what are your observations about this dynamic?
Yeah, no, I have. I actually am an investor in 3 teams that are partners. Which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
But they've been together a long time, thank
Personal
God.
Partners,
it didn't happen when they started the business, yeah. I like the dynamic of that.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to have diversity. Women think different than men, and I think it makes a great team.
Mm-hmm. what are the top 3 things you look for just generally in a business idea as an investor?
You know, if you look at my portfolio, which many of you already just did, is that I'm really all over the place. And I think that if anything, I'm looking for really good entrepreneurs. I mean, of course, it has to be a great idea, and I think that it's something that has potential and legs. But it also has to be someone who's sitting in front of me that I say, wow, you're so passionate, and you're going to be able to execute on this. And if it works, great, but I think that you have the chops to get it done.
That's what's critical. Have you had any exits yet?
I've had 2 exits.
Great, congrats.
And yeah, so my first big exit was the first investment that I invested in. And it was Curb Media that sold to Vox, and that was great. And we still actually own a piece of Vox, so I think it could even be a bigger exit. Yeah,
Curb is one of my favorite sites. What are the, let's see, what else? What other questions does everyone want to ask here? Let's cycle through it. Can you scroll down a little bit? Because I know I missed a lot of here. Have you ever invested in women in any international businesses, or have you focused domestically?
No, Ida Tin is from Berlin, and I actually have edited, came out of London, and I have another investment that's not up here. It's a he, which I did not bring to the plate today, and that's in Berlin as well. And that's it, I think, overseas.
What would you say?
One in Poland. I just did one in Poland.
All right, so building a global portfolio.
Exactly.
What do you think is the #1 roadblock to preventing women entrepreneurs to get as much funding as their male counterparts? And that's how it's framed, although I'm not sure that there's a discrepancy in terms of the amount of funding that female versus male entrepreneurs get.
You know, I think that I like that quote from Estee Lauder, which was, I sell every day, and I sell hard.
Right.
And I do think that a really good entrepreneur has to sell their business to the people on the other side of the table. And if they're not right for them, they have to get up and say, meeting ended, not for me.
Now, are you serving on boards?
Uh-huh.
So let's talk about boards for a moment, because I know a lot of us in here have businesses with boards. How about the role of a woman on a board? You know, in building diversity on a board. I mean, you've seen, I'm sure, both sides of the equation there. What are your thoughts?
I think it's really important to have women diversity on the board. I mean, you know, I think having an all-male board is just as bad as having an all-female board. It's important to have different thought processes. And as I said, you know, particularly when it comes to any of these businesses dealing with products on the internet, everyone has a different angle.
And then we'll end here, but with one last question. How about, have you thought about empowering women in developing countries, like leveraging a lot of the lessons learned and you know, and your passion for this for, you know, female-driven businesses and small businesses and emerging economies and things like that?
You know, I mean, I'm probably more overextended than I need to be. I mean, my husband and I are really philanthropic, and we give to things that I think we're very big on education, particularly in New York, and universities, and so that's something we really care about, and also other cultural institutions in New York. I think it's really hard to also make that leap. It's not something I don't think about, I just don't think I have the bandwidth.
Well, if you're out there and you're thinking about starting a business, you have to have Gotham Gal see what you're up to. Thank you, Joanne, for joining us.